Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode from the RPA Vanguard channel. My name is Andy Menon. In this video, we are going to be talking about how to perform file uploads and downloads with the new and modern UiPath VB apps. Let's get started. About a year ago, I had uploaded a video on the RPA Vanguard channel on the UiPath Apps file picker control, right? And in the classic version of UiPath Apps, this control is known as the file picker control, right? And in response to that video, just recently, less than 24 hours ago, I received this comment from one of the audience, right? And it said, in the most recent App Studio, the file picker does not exist, only file uploader, right? And on the file uploader, I do not find a value binding property, right? So how do I use the file uploader for this example, right? In this video, we will take a look at how to upload or download files in the modern UiPath VB apps. I'm in UiPath Apps Studio, and I have created a bare bones demo app. And I will be skipping most of the obvious stuff because I have created so many videos on apps now that if you have watched a few of them at least, you have an idea of how to construct an app at the bare minimum. So I do expect audience to have some basic awareness of how to construct apps. Okay, so going back to the audience question, right? The file picker doesn't exist, right? One of the things that the audience brought forth through his question was the file picker doesn't exist. And that is correct. In the modern VB apps, there isn't anything called file picker. But the question also says there's only file uploader, right? I would like to clarify that, right? It is true that there is a component called, there is a control called file uploader, but there is also another control, right? So if we come back to App Studio and go into Add Control and then go into the input palette, you will see the control called File Uploader, which is correct, right? There is a control named File Uploader. But if you go into the display side or the display palette of the control panel, you will also see a control named File Downloader, right? So in the modern UiPath VB apps, file picker control doesn't exist. Instead, the responsibility of the file picker control have now been split between two different controls. One is the file uploader, which is an input control, and the other is a file downloader, which is a display control, right? So do not be confused. You might not find file downloader in the input. It's not an input type control. You're actually receiving a file using a file downloader, right? Rather, you're downloading a file, and therefore you will find it in the display palette of your apps control panel, right? So I just wanted to clarify that and make that clear so that audience may find this useful. Before you begin working with the file upload control, at least, you will need a few things. The first is obviously the help of a storage bucket, right? What you got to do is, you got to add a storage bucket from your respective orchestrator instance. And to do that, you go to add control, you go to add, and then you go to storage bucket, and then you pull in the storage bucket that you want, right? And I've chosen this storage bucket from my orchestrator instance. So once you have that, the two other things you're going to need are a few app variables, right? A couple of app variables. The easiest way to add app variables is to click the plus here from the app variables node on the control panel on the left. The first and the simplest app variable that you will be adding is of type text. And I have named my app variables with a certain convention for easy reference. And the prefix will be var underscore, right? And the name of the variable. So this is obvious what this variable does from its name. It has got to do with the name of the file that you are going to be working with in this app. And it's of type text. The second variable is something distinct and new to UiPath VB apps. If you are going to be working with files in the new VB apps, you got to create a special type of variable. And that variable type is the AppsFile type variable, right? So please do remember, if you're working with files, this is the variable that you will need. Again, I have the var underscore prefix, and I have named it my AppsFile object, just for clarity that this is not an ordinary variable, right? So once you have nailed down the bare minimum requirements, it's time for us to get back to the designer surface of the apps and see how we have set up the file upload control, right? So basically on the designer surface, there is this file upload control that I have dragged on here. And I have configured the bare minimum requirements here that you see on the UI. I am not going to go into the details because there are enough videos out there, including the RPA Vanguard channel. If you go to the file picker video that I was talking about, it covers a lot of basics of a file upload component. Most of the concepts are the same. But I would really like to stress one thing, just in the interest of security and to make sure that you are not uploading dangerous files. Please make sure to allow to have a certain restriction on your file types. In this case, I've restricted my file uploader to accept only text or CSV files, and it is limited to the default 10 megabytes, right? And therefore, if you try to drop a file that is not a text or CSV or exceeds 10 MB, your file upload control is going to reject it, right? The next thing is, before we get into how all of this works, just so you know, the app has been divided into two parts. What I'm trying to do in this part above the top half of the app is I'm uploading the file, but when I'm downloading the file, I'm trying to download it without using the file downloader control. I'll show you why this is more fun, and you get to learn a few additional things when working with file uploader in general. And then in the later half of this video, we are going to look at how to do the same thing using the file downloader, which is pretty straightforward, but not as much fun. But let's look at both of them. But before we go into the details of this, let us see how this top half of the app works. To begin the demo, I'm going to click on this plus icon and drop a text file. And you can see that as soon as the file uploaded, this button was rendered visible. And the button has figured out what the auto-generated name of the file is, right? And that is why I built this the way you see it working, because we got to know if your app is uploading files with auto-generated names, how do you get hold of it, right? How do you learn to get that value, right? Because if you don't know the auto-generated name, then you cannot download it, even if you use the file downloader control, right? So we'll take a look at that. But let us see if this file can be downloaded, right? I'm going to click on the download file button. And as soon as I do that, there is an indication saying that, yes, the file has been downloaded. And now, there's an option for me to open it. Now, here's something that I would want to point out. There is a way to directly open the file after clicking the download button, but you have always seen, any internet user knows that when you download a file from any browser, very rarely you have the ability to open it straight away without getting permission from the user, right? Every browser or any self-respecting software will ask for your permission before you can open the file, right? And therefore, what I've done is I've built this in such a way that once the file is downloaded, there is an option for me to open it, right? That way I'm more careful about what is it that I'm trying to open. So in this case, I know what file it is. So I'm going to click on this link here that has now become visible and active. And here is one of my ChatGPT transcripts that that I recorded in one of my previous videos on creating a ChatGPT client, right? So good. So what we have done here is we have uploaded a file. We have figured out how to get hold of the file name if it has been auto-generated by your app, and then use that file name to download it from the storage bucket. And while we download it, we have a cautionary option, right, for the user to either open that file or skip that file entirely, right? So let's go back to the app and see how we have achieved that. Back in the app, we are in the file uploader control. We have talked about the general tab. What's more important is the events tab, right? And in the file uploader, there are a couple of events that you can configure. And one is the file added and one is the file removed, right? So file removed is that if you drop a file on this, a recycle or a trash can icon shows up here, and you can delete the file just in case you've changed your mind and want to upload a different file, right? And then what we do here is we go into the file added event. And this is where all the fun begins. The first thing that you want to do is to upload the file to storage bucket. Now, going back to the user's question, right? The audience posted this question, and it's important. On the file uploader, I do not find the value binding, right? There is no value binding attribute for the file uploader. That is correct, right? If we go back and we look at the file uploader and look at the general tab, there is no attribute where you can supply a variable and bind the file that you're dropping into this control, on top of this control, to that variable, right? That is correct. And we'll see how to get at the file in the event, right? So if I edit this rule, the first thing that I'm going to do is call the rule upload file to storage bucket. So I'm going to repeat what I have here again, and then say upload file to storage bucket. This is the part where you get hold of the file that the user has dropped on top of the file uploader. That's the first thing. And what you do is you open the expressions editor. And this is where you have to be conscious about what you have named your controls, right? It is important. In this case, your main page is known as the main page, which is the default. But you must be mindful of what you named your component, because that dictates how you get references to some of the things that you need, right? And therefore, it's important that you know the name of your main page and the name of your file uploader control. So in this case, if I want to know the name of the file that's been dropped on the file uploader control, I say main page dot my file uploader. You see, it's case sensitive, and therefore it's, you see, my file uploader is my file uploader control. You see on the left, dot value. This returns the name of the file that you just dropped on top of the file uploader, because you need to know the name of the file before you upload it, right? So you save. As usual, you see there is no error, so this is good. So you now have the name of the file to upload. The next thing is where do you want to upload it to? That's pretty easy. If you are pulled in the storage bucket, you can drag the storage bucket. If not, you can click plus here and add the storage bucket on the fly. So double click you have, and this is where the fun part is. If you want to learn about, an additional thing about file uploaders and how to use that in VB, I would recommend you leaving this to this option checked, because if you uncheck this, then you can control the name of the file, right? You can always, because you know the name of the file, you can always download it at any time. But in case you have enabled this option, once the file is uploaded, you don't know what the name of the file is. So what do? We need to get hold of the name of the file once it's uploaded. So if I go into the storage bucket, and now you can see that there is only one file here. If I refresh, you will see that the file that I uploaded is here, and it has got an auto-generated name, and we need to get our hands on that, right? So here you see it's already there. I am going to create and assign value step, or it's a set value rule, and I am going to invoke my text variable var underscore. You see, sometimes the IntelliSense does not really work efficiently. So I say var my file name. This is the text variable. Remember, your file name is a text string. So var my file name, save, and then you need to enter the value, right? This is where you will learn some additional attributes of your file uploader. Again, you do main page dot my file uploader dot upload file to storage bucket. There is an attribute called upload file to storage bucket. You click on it, and then you say dot uploaded file name, right? So main page, my file uploader control, upload file to storage bucket, uploaded file name. Remember, this is not file name, this is uploaded file name. That means if it's an auto-generated file name, you can trap it or reference it from this attribute, right? And again, as you can see, this is a string. And because this is a string and it is being returned to a string variable, there are no errors. You say save, right? Now you have the auto-generated name of the file, right? Now you know how to get it. Basically, what I've done here is what you see down here, right? And it's similar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete it, right? So now you've got your hands on this auto-generated file name in your variable called var my file name, right? So now we are going to give it to that button so that it can download the auto-generated file, right? So we close this out and we go to the button. And if you look at the button, it's the name of the button is download button. The text that is displayed here is an expression, right? If I go to general and look at the text, you see it's very simple. Download the file and the name of the file, right? That's the variable that I set in the previous step. So download file and append var my file name, right? And that is why you see that auto-generated name showing up. Now, you also saw that button become visible after the file upload, right? And therefore, as usual is the case, we have regulated the hidden attribute of that button. And it's again very simple. It says if the var file name is empty, then make me hidden, make the button hidden. So I'm going to write this again. I'm going to say I'm going to say var my file name, and then I'm going to say string dot is null or empty. You can see sometimes the IntelliSense is spotty, doesn't work the way we want to. Is null or empty, open bracket, the name of your variable, close bracket. You see the expression is Boolean, right? The expected type is Boolean. And you're saying if this variable name, the file name, does not contain the name of the variable, then string is null or empty returns true, in which case hidden becomes true, in which case the button is hidden. But the moment you get your hands on this, this file name, as you saw how we did in that rule before, then this rule becomes false, so hidden becomes false and the button becomes visible, right? And that's how you see that button becoming visible on successful upload of the file and after we fetch the name of the file successfully, right? So now no changes here. I'm just going to cancel. And the next thing is we have to make this button do some work. This is the superficial name. So we go into the events of the button and we implement the clicked on rule, and we go into that. And here it's, again, instead of upload, you use the download file from storage bucket. Again, I'm going to reconstruct what you see here. I'm going to say download file from storage bucket. And of course, you will need where to download it from, the storage bucket. Next, it says file name with extension. Remember, this is now the auto-generated file name that you fetched in the previous step. So I'm going to say my or var my file name, right? This is the string variable, right? So, and then you say save. Next, you need to capture the file once it's downloaded, right? And this is where that my special apps variable is going to come into play, right? Like I said, in vb.net, vb apps, it's called AppsFile. So I'm going to assign the variable. Here it is, my AppsFile object. And then when it is completed, now here's where what you implement makes all the difference. The natural tendency is to come in here and say, okay, as soon as the file is downloaded, open it. You don't want to be doing that, right? So you don't have to really implement anything here, because what I'll be doing is I will be enabling the download link like you saw in the demo, right? As soon as the file is downloaded, this link will become visible and it will become active, right? So I have not implemented anything here. As you can see, whatever I had implemented, I removed it, because if you put the open URL right here, as soon as you hit the download button, the file is simply going to open up, and you don't want that, right? That's not a good practice. So very simple. What's the storage bucket? And what is the file name, your auto-generated file name, and where do I capture that file? And that's in your AppsFile variable, right? So I'm going to delete this. The next thing I'm going to do is go down to this label here. It's a simple label control, and we are going to see how to open the file, right? So this is the label. If you go into the general attributes, I have the events, and in the events, if I go to the clicked on implementation, it's just a simple step. You are going to say open URL. And this is important. You now need to give the full storage bucket URL of that auto-generated file that is in your storage bucket. You need the full URL to this file, right? So how do you do that? You have already captured your file in an apps file variable, right? So what you do is, it's very simple. You go in here and say var my apps file object dot, it's got an attribute called URL. This is the full storage bucket URL that this control uses to reach out and grab that file, right? So you click save, and that's pretty much the simplest and the bare minimum configuration required. Obviously, you will want to open it in a new tab, not in the same tab as the app, and therefore, you leave this default configuration to true, right? So now this link knows how to download the download the or open the file, right? The question is, how do I control its visibility, right? So if I go into general and look at the hidden attribute, this is another thing that I found that you might want to be careful about. What I have said here is make this link invisible if you do not have a storage bucket URL, right? If you do not have a URL, if that URL is empty, that means a file does not exist or a file has not been downloaded, and therefore its URL doesn't exist, and therefore keep me invisible, right? The reason I'm pointing this out to you is this works, but this does not work. If I say var my files object is nothing, I tried using this, it did not work. So basically what I think is either it's a bug or the var AppsFile object is not null when it is created. When you declare that variable here, it is not null. It is created, but it does not have the URL yet, right? Basically, it's an empty object, but a valid object. And therefore, if you try to use this, this is not going to work. Instead, what you do is you say dot URL, and then, as usual is the case, string dot is null or empty, open bracket, go to the end, close bracket. Right? This works. So I'm not going to change anything. I'm just going to cancel this out. So basically, when the file is downloaded, this AppsFile object gets populated, it gets a valid URL, and as soon as that valid URL is not empty, then this link gets activated, and therefore the hidden becomes false, right? So this is how you saw this thing work in action, right? First, I upload the file, the button becomes active, I click on the button, it downloads the file, and the file is downloaded, this link becomes active, and I'm able to open the file. So back in Studio again, and we are going to focus on the lower half of this page. Basically, I've added a checkbox here. And what happens is when this checkbox is toggled, right? When you click on this checkbox, this container becomes visible. It's straightforward. You can look at the app on how this is done. We have discussed this many times in the past. So what I've done here is I've dropped a file downloader again. The file downloader is not found in the input. It is found in the display palette of your control panel, right? So here, if you go down here, you will find the file downloader under the display, right? So you drag and drop that here. The good part of this control is, other than the general attributes like the label, there are no events. Okay, that's the good part. But what you have to configure is the source, right? The source is an AppsFile variable, not a string, but the special AppsFile variable, right? So if you click on the general attributes of the general properties of the file downloader, you click on this, you give the name of your object. Look, it says expected type is AppsFile, and therefore your variable var, my AppsFile object, has been assigned to it, right? Now let's go back and repeat our test. This time I'm going to upload the file as usual, but I'm going to download it with the file downloader, right? I'm going to enable this before I start the test because you got to see what's happening. And here the file download is visible. Please do focus on what's happening here as well as what's happening here. I'm going to click on the plus sign and, as usual, pick up some random file. This time I'm going to say Formula1. Let me say open. The file's uploading. The buttons become active. It has got the name. It's got the name. Now, there is no reaction from this control. Why? Because it still doesn't know what the file is, right? So if I download the file, the AppsFile variable is going to be populated, right? If I click on this, you see When this link becomes visible, you see a link being visible to you on the file downloader. And you can see that the auto-generated name of the file is the link. Basically, whatever this link is doing, the file downloader component is doing, right? But it's a bit more fancy and a bit more straightforward. Here you have the name of the file and you have the download icon. And now if you want to download the file, you click on this icon and the file opens up. So you see, it's a lot simpler, a lot more straightforward, but if I didn't build it this way, I would not have known how to get hold of the auto-generated file name, right? That's something new that I learned, and it's a useful trick to have when you are working with file uploader and file downloader controls in UiPath VB apps. So that is all for this video. I hope you have learned something new. And just before we close, I would like to state that most of the basic aspects of UiPath apps between the classic apps and the new generation VB apps is mostly the same. So if you want to know something about a file picker control, please go back to file picker basics and look at that. Similarly, there are many other controls here where you get some of the basic information on how to use these controls. But going forward, when I'm making these videos, I'll probably skip the obvious and focus only on things that are different. So if you like the content of this video, please do like and subscribe to my channel. I'll truly appreciate it. Thank you, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.